In every great dynasty, tales of power struggles, betrayal, and ruthless ambition have emerged. But what happens when those closest to the throne, those bound by blood, become the targets of such ambition? Join us as we uncover the sinister stories of queens who executed their own family members to secure their rule. And fear not, for at the end of this harrowing journey, we shall offer a prayer to provide solace and reflection after hearing these chilling tales. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. James chapter 3 verse 16, ESV. When we embark on the journey of human history, the pages often depict a vivid tapestry of struggles and triumphs. In the grand narrative of royal dynasties, a recurring theme is the ceaseless contest for power, a contest that binds and blinds, elevates and obliterates. To set the stage for our exploration of some of history's most notorious queens, it becomes essential to understand the historical periods and socio-political environments in which they ruled. The epics of these queens span a broad spectrum of time and geography, each unique in its context yet eerily similar in its unyielding brutality. Picture, if you will, the ancient kingdom of Israel during the era of Queen Jezebel. The political landscape was a patchwork of alliances and enmities woven together by fragile threads of marriage and war. The survival of a royal bloodline often depended on decisive, sometimes ruthless, action. Moving westward and forward through history, we find ourselves in Tudor England, under the reign of Queen Mary I. The socio-political environment was a cauldron of religious fervor and political intrigue. The very soul of the nation seemed to hang in the balance, as Protestant and Catholic ideologies clashed violently. In such a charged atmosphere, the throne itself became a battleground, with bloodlines subjected to the test of fire and faith. Further east, we encounter the imperial China of Wu Zetian. Her ascent to power during the Tang dynasty was marked by an intricate web of palace intrigue and outer court manipulations. The socio-political environment here emphasized the divine right of the emperor, a near-sacrosanct mandate that allowed for draconian measures to secure the celestial throne. Turning our gaze to the island nation of Madagascar, under the iron rule of Queen Ranavalona I, the historical context shifts to a period of initial contact and resistance against European colonialism. Here, the significance of preserving royal bloodlines intertwined with the urgent need to stave off external domination and maintain sovereign control, with family ties often severed by the sword for the sake of the kingdom's unity. As we delve into 16th century France, we see Queen Catherine de' Medici navigating a labyrinth of political factions and religious wars. The nation was torn asunder by the violent contest between Huguenots and Catholics. In this volatile environment, Catherine's machinations to secure her children's future on the throne resulted in a perilous dance with death, often within her own family circle. Finally, we must not overlook the early medieval period of Kievan Rus, where Queen Olga of Kiev reigned. Her era was defined by the nascent formation of regional power structures, coupled with the desire for consolidation and retribution. The feuds and vengeance that characterized her reign were reflections of the broader socio-political need for unifying control in a fragmented land. Across these varied histories, one common thread binds all: the precarious nature of royal bloodlines. In every period and place, the legitimacy of a monarch's rule was inexorably tied to their lineage. This principle cultivated an environment where the measures to protect and solidify one's claim to the throne could become ferocious, even extending to the execution of one's own kin. The annals of history reveal a sobering truth about the human condition: that in the relentless pursuit of power, the ties of family are not immune to the severance of ambition. As we journey through the tales of these formidable queens, we must remember that the seeds of their actions were sown in the fertile and often hostile soils of their times. These historical contexts not only shaped their reigns but also imprinted upon their legacies the indelible marks of both greatness and infamy. It is with trepidation and an acute sense of history's shadowy corridors that we turn our gaze towards Queen Jezebel of Israel. Jezebel, a name synonymous with infamy, a name that echoes through the annals of biblical lore as a paragon of ruthless ambition and unyielding power. Yet, who was this woman, and how did she come to symbolize the very dark recesses of political machinations and familial betrayal? To grasp the full measure of Jezebel's influence, we must first understand the context into which she was wedded. Coming from the Phoenician city of Sidon, she was married to Ahab, the king of Israel, a union engineered more for political alliance than for love, a common theme in the tapestry of royal marriages. In a land where religious fidelity to Yahweh was paramount, Jezebel brought with her the worship of Baal and Asherah, gods of her Phoenician heritage. This introduction of foreign deities would set the stage for profound conflict. From the moment Jezebel stepped into the royal courts of Israel, her presence was both commanding and intrusive. Her zeal for Baal worship did not merely coexist with the worship of Yahweh, it sought to supplant it. She is often credited, or more aptly blamed, for coercing her husband into erecting altars for Baal, thereby leading Israel into idolatry. In the pages of Scripture, this turning away from Yahweh was not just a religious scandal but a profound betrayal. The chronicles of Jezebel's reign are punctuated with acts of ruthless consolidation of power. Perhaps the most infamous is the story of Naboth's vineyard. Coveting the land adjacent to his palace, Ahab desired Naboth's vineyard, but Naboth refused to sell it, adhering to the inheritance laws of Israel. It was Jezebel who orchestrated a vile scheme. She forged letters in Ahab's name, convened a false assembly, and bribed witnesses to accuse Naboth of blasphemy and treason. Naboth was executed, and Ahab seized the vineyard. This act of treachery was not merely one of property acquisition. It was a cold and calculated use of the machinery of state to annihilate an innocent man, showcasing the extent of Jezebel's malevolent influence. The tendrils of Jezebel's ambition did not stop at the borders of her kingdom but reached into the very fabric of her household. It is said that she maintained power through a series of purges, rooting out those who threatened her position. The records suggest that Jezebel did not hesitate to eliminate members of her own family if they posed a threat to her and Ahab's rule. The blood on her hands was not only that of distant enemies but of those closest to her, weaving a chilling narrative of a queen who placed power above kinship. Jezebel's story, as recounted in the Book of Kings, is a solemn warning about the perils of unchecked ambition and the moral decay that accompanies the lust for power. Her end came swiftly and brutally when Jehu, anointed to be king, rose against the house of Ahab. In a dramatic scene, Jezebel, ever defiant, adorned herself and faced Jehu from her window. Her taunts did little to deter him. Commanding her eunuchs to throw her down, Jezebel was cast from her high place, swiftly trampled underfoot, and left to the dogs. The legacy of Jezebel is a complex mosaic, one that illustrates the clash of cultures, the struggle for religious dominance, and the dark allure of absolute power. Her life serves as a testament to the inevitable downfall that accompanies moral and spiritual corruption. As we reflect on her story, we are reminded of the timeless truth encapsulated in the scriptural warning. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. James chapter 3 verse 16, ESV. It is a somber reflection on the human condition, a call to examine the ethical boundaries we dare not cross. Through the lens of Jezebel's narrative, we see the stark consequences of forsaking divine principles for the fleeting gains of earthly power. Her life and actions provide a sobering exemplar of the dangers inherent in the fusion of political ambition with moral compromise, echoing through the corridors of history to warn future generations of the perils that lie in the pursuit of domination at the expense of integrity and righteousness. In the annals of English history, few figures evoke as much dark fascination as Queen Mary I, often known by the grim moniker, Bloody Mary. Born into turmoil and destined for the throne, Mary's reign was marked by profound religious zeal and profound bloodshed, a blend of personal tragedy and unyielding ambition that cast her legacy into infamy. To understand Mary, one must first appreciate the world she inherited. Daughter of King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, she grew up amidst the seismic shifts of the English Reformation. Her father's break with the Catholic Church, driven by his desire for a male heir, cast a long shadow over her life. Witness to her mother's rejection and the sweeping religious transformations of the era, Mary's staunch Catholic faith became the anchor in her tumultuous world. When Mary ascended the throne in 1553, following the brief reign of her Protestant half-brother, Edward VI, and the ill-fated 9-day rule of Lady Jane Grey, one could sense the storm brewing. Mary inherited a realm fractured by religious conflict, a country teetering on the brink of chaos. Her mission was clear: restore Catholicism to England. And in her fervent pursuit of this goal, her reign became synonymous with fear. Mary's efforts at restoration began with policy, repealing Protestant reforms and re-establishing Roman Catholic doctrine. However, policy soon gave way to persecution. Driven by a fierce conviction that her soul, and indeed the soul of the nation, were at stake, Mary sanctioned the execution of over 280 Protestant dissenters, martyrs who would later be immortalized in Fox's Book of Martyrs. Among these tragic histories, the execution of her relatives stands out for its particular cruelty and cold calculation. Jane Grey, Mary's young cousin dubbed the 9 Days Queen, represents the most poignant of these familial betrayals. Although initially ambivalent about her cousin's fate and perhaps inclined towards mercy, Mary ultimately decided that Jane posed too great a threat. A figurehead for Protestant rebellion, Jane's continued existence was a political liability Mary could not afford. Thus, in February 1554, after an uprising led by Thomas Wyatt aimed at placing Jane back on the throne, Mary signed her cousin's death warrant. The young Jane met her end with tragic dignity, a pawn sacrificed in Mary's desperate game of power. Mary's matrimonial alliance further complicated her reign and exacerbated her notoriety. Wed to Philip II of Spain, a marriage steeped in political calculus rather than affection, Mary hoped to secure the strength and solidarity of Spain's vast empire in her quest to solidify England's Catholic identity. Yet, this union, deeply unpopular amongst her subjects, spurred further unrest and fears of Spanish domination. Even among her own family, Mary's marriage sown distrust and division. It was within this context that Mary ordered the imprisonment and surveillance of her half-sister, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, epitomized the Protestant cause and represented a beacon of hope for many who resisted Mary's fierce Catholic policies. Though spared from execution, Elizabeth's imprisonment in the Tower of London and subsequent house arrest bear grim testimony to Mary's recognition of her sister as a potent threat to her rule. The weight of these executions, the familial strife, and the relentless pursuit of her religious agenda smothered any potential for Mary's reign to be remembered for justice or compassion. Instead, her actions fostered an enduring legacy of dread. The nickname, Bloody Mary, a stark reminder of her uncompromising zeal, persisted long after her death in 1558. Mary's reign, though brief, left indelible marks upon the fabric of English history. In her, we see the manifestation of a tragic figure, torn between her devotions to faith, family, and the crown, often choosing the path of ruthless ambition and perceived righteousness. In the end, Queen Mary I's story is a solemn reminder of the perils inherent in absolute power and the devastating consequences when personal conviction overrides compassion and mercy. As we reflect upon Mary's life and reign, we are called to acknowledge the complex interplay of power, faith, and familial duty. Her bloody quest to restore Catholicism, punctuated by the executions of those closest to her, serves not only as a chapter in the annals of history but also as a cautionary tale of the moral perils that accompany unbridled ambition. It is in these tales of history, where power and tragedy intertwine, that we glimpse the profound and often painful lessons of the past, urging us to heed their warnings and strive for a future marked by understanding, tolerance, and true compassion. Amidst the crimson tapestries of China's grand history emerges the tale of Wu Zetian, the only female emperor to ascend the dragon throne. The annals of time have not forgotten her, for her reign remains a vivid testament to an ambition unparalleled in the chronicles of man. Born in 624 AD, Wu Zetian entered the royal palace as a mere concubine to Emperor Taizong of the Tang dynasty. The path that led this determined woman from the shadows of the court to the pinnacle of power is as winding and treacherous as the serpentine Great Wall itself. Wu's ascent began with her keen intellect and an insatiable desire for influence. Upon Emperor Taizong's death, tradition dictated that concubines without children were to be sent to a life of piety in a nunnery. But fate had other designs, for Wu had already captured the eye of Taizong's successor, Emperor Gaozong. With strategic acumen, she maneuvered her way back into the palace and into the emperor's favor, eventually rising to become his empress. The palace, resplendent with jade and silk, also harbored shadows of machinations and whispers of conspiracy. In this world, Wu Zetian was an adept player, mastering the art of political chess with formidable precision. To consolidate her power, Wu is alleged to have committed acts of great severity. It is said she orchestrated the demise of her rivals, including members of her own family. Scholars debate the veracity of these claims, but the legend speaks of a woman who would let nothing impede her path to supremacy. Her reputed ruthlessness reached even those of her own blood. It is told that Wu Zetian eliminated her own daughter, framing Empress Wang in a bid to remove her as a rival. This cruel stratagem effectively cleared her own way to the throne, as she positioned herself as both a victim and a seeker of justice within the court's intricate dance of power. In 690 AD, Wu Zetian's ambition culminated in her declaring herself the Emperor of China. The heavens themselves seemed to acknowledge her ascendancy as she founded the short-lived Zhou dynasty. Her rule, marked by both achievements and controversy, witnessed profound transformations. Wu Zetian promoted capable officials based on merit rather than aristocratic lineage and endeavored to elevate the status of women within the socio-political fabric of the dynasty. Her reign also saw the flourishing of literature and the arts, as well as significant expansions to the empire. Yet, the emperor's legacy is inextricably intertwined with tales of cruelty. The depth of her ambition and the extent of her actions evoke a somber reflection on the dualities inherent in the corridors of power. While she established reforms that benefited the empire, the means by which she secured her throne cast a long shadow over her reign. Wu Zetian's story is one of grandeur and enigma, a reflection of the human condition wherein ambitions, noble or otherwise, can drive individuals to extraordinary heights and to the darkest depths. It serves as a potent reminder of the moral complexities that often accompany the pursuit of power. Thus, the tale of Empress Wu Zetian endures, a tapestry woven with both brilliance and shadows, inviting contemplation on the nature of power, legacy, and the human spirit itself. Imagine, if you will, the vast and verdant landscapes of Madagascar, an island nation off the southeastern coast of Africa. This lush paradise, teeming with unique wildlife and diverse cultures, was once the domain of a queen whose reign would be forever etched in history for its brutality and relentless pursuit of power. We speak of Queen Ranavalona I, an extraordinary figure whose name has both struck fear and fascinated historians. Ranavalona's ascent to power was anything but ordinary. Born as Ramavo, she was destined for a life of nobility but would rise to far greater heights through a series of cunning and often ruthless maneuvers. When King Radama I died in 1828, the path to the throne was fraught with peril and competition. Ramavo, through a marriage alliance with Radama, seized this opportunity with an iron will unmatched by many. Renamed Ranavalona I, she took the throne and embarked on a reign characterized by stark measures to maintain her grip on power. Her rule began with calculated moves to eliminate any potential threats to her authority. This often meant turning against her own blood. Family members who posed the slightest hint of opposition or disloyalty were systematically executed. No familial bond was too sacred to break if it meant securing her sovereignty. For Ranavalona, ruling Madagascar was a divine mandate, and preserving its independence from foreign influence was a task she pursued with relentless fervor. She expelled Christian missionaries, dismantled the influence of European powers, and reinstated traditional Malagasy customs and beliefs. Her policies were harsh and unyielding, evidencing her belief in ruling through strength and fear. Her methods of maintaining control were extreme by any measure. The Queen deployed a network of spies and loyalists to ensure that any dissent, especially from within the royal family, was swiftly identified and eradicated. Accusations of treason or conspiracy, often bred from paranoia, led to brutal punishments. Executions, poisonings, and forced labor were the grim fates that awaited those who dared to challenge her. These harsh practices extended to wider society as well. Ranavalona instituted the Tangina ordeal, a trial by poison, to root out unbelievers and potential traitors. This practice resulted in the deaths of thousands, and its impact was deeply felt across the kingdom. Observers of the time, both local and foreign, recorded their astonishment and horror at the severity of her rule. Yet, to the Queen, these measures were necessary. In a period marked by internal strife and external pressures, controlling the narrative and eliminating threats was her way of preserving Madagascar's sovereignty. One must consider the psychological and cultural complexities at play here. Ranavalona's actions can be partly understood through the lens of survival and the historical context of her times. Royal bloodlines existed in a world where kinship could be both a source of strength and the seed of downfall. Power was not only won but had to be rigorously defended, often at the expense of familial harmony. Therefore, Ranavalona's legacy is woven with both the threads of tyranny and the staunch preservation of her nation's identity. Her reign, which lasted until her death in 1861, is often viewed through conflicting prisms of admiration for her defiance against colonial power and horror at the cruelty she inflicted to maintain her dominion. As we reflect on the life and rule of Queen Ranavalona I, we are reminded of the potent mix of ambition and paranoia that can drive even the most exalted rulers to the edge of ruthless extremity. Her story is but one chapter in the complex tapestry of history, where power dynamics often lead to the darkest corridors of human behavior. Through it all, Rana Vallona's reign stands as a testament to the lengths to which one will go to hold on to power, even when it demands the ultimate sacrifice of one's own blood. Her rule serves as a chilling reminder of the thin veneer separating guardianship from tyranny and the enduring, often tragic, human struggle to balance authority with compassion. In the grand tapestry of European history, few figures are as enigmatic and controversial as Queen Catherine de' Medici of France. Born in Florence into the illustrious and powerful Medici family, Catherine's life was destined to intertwine with the highest echelons of power. Her marriage into the French royal family set the stage for one of the most turbulent eras in French history, a period marked by intrigue, betrayal, and bloodshed. To truly comprehend Catherine's ruthless actions, one must first understand the volatile context in which she wielded her influence. The 16th century was an era of religious upheaval and political instability. France, a nation divided along confessional lines, found itself in the throes of civil wars between Catholic and Protestant factions. These conflicts threatened not only the stability of the realm but also the very existence of the monarchy itself. It was in this cauldron of discord that Catherine de' Medici rose to prominence, her actions driven by an unyielding desire to secure the future of her offspring and the survival of her dynasty. Raised in the shadow of Florence's Machiavellian politics, Catherine was no stranger to the art of statecraft. Her early years were marked by peril and uncertainty, shaping her into a figure capable of navigating the treacherous waters of court intrigue with unmatched acumen. Upon becoming queen consort to Henry II of France, Catherine quickly established herself as a formidable force behind the throne. Following her husband's death, Catherine assumed the role of regent for her young sons, Charles IX and Henry III. It was during this period that her reputation for Machiavellian ruthlessness took root. Catherine found herself in an unrelenting struggle to maintain her family's grip on power amid the ceaseless machinations of rival factions. Her most infamous act, one that continues to haunt her legacy, was her alleged involvement in the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. The massacre, a horrendous bloodbath, saw thousands of French Huguenots, Protestants, slaughtered across Paris and beyond. While historical accounts vary, many attest that Catherine's hand was instrumental in orchestrating this event. Desperate to quell the Protestant threat to her son's reign, she purportedly sanctioned the wholesale slaughter of Huguenot leaders gathered in Paris for a royal wedding. This chilling act of genocide, born out of a desire to consolidate Catholic power, cemented her place in history as a queen who would stop at nothing to protect her children's inheritance. Yet, Catherine's ruthlessness extended beyond her dealings with religious dissenters. Her own family was not immune to her imperious resolve. When her son, the Duke of Anjou, appeared to have designs on the throne, Catherine did not hesitate to assert her dominance. Through a series of strategic maneuvers, she ensured that her favored son, Henry III, would succeed Charles IX, rather than allowing the ambitious Anjou to usurp power. Her involvement in the mysterious death of her daughter-in-law, Margaret of Valois' husband, Henry IV of Navarre's mother, Jeanne d'Albret, further underscores her relentless pursuit of political supremacy. Accusations of poisoning surrounded Jeanne's death, with suspicions pointing to Catherine's desire to weaken Navarre's position in the tumultuous power struggle. Catherine's life, a symphony of ambition and treachery, embodies the complexities of power and motherhood in an age where the stakes were life and death. Her actions, driven by a potent mix of fear, ambition, and maternal instinct, reveal a woman willing to blur moral boundaries to secure her family's future. While history often casts her as a villain, it is essential to recognize the turbulent world that shaped her. In navigating the labyrinth of Renaissance politics, Catherine de' Medici commands both our fascination and our awe, a testament to the intricate dance of power, legacy, and survival. Many centuries ago, in the rugged expanse that is now Ukraine, the land of Kiev bore witness to the astonishing and chilling tale of Queen Olga. Known for her unrelenting pursuit of vengeance, Olga's rise to power was a tale not just of ambition, but of a ferocity unmatched in the annals of history. Imagine a world where every deed, every whisper, and every glance carried the weight of political machination. This was the world Olga inherited, a world in which power was the ultimate currency, and betrayal, its trading card. Yet, in this ruthless arena, Olga's vengeance-fueled actions stand out not merely as a matter of political necessity but as a saga of raw, unbridled retribution. Olga's life took a harrowing turn with the murder of her husband, Igor, the Prince of Kiev, at the hands of the Drevlians, a neighboring tribe. This single event triggered a cascade of dramatic actions that would etch Olga's name into the annals of ferocious rulers. Fueled by a burning need for justice that bordered on the apocalyptic, Olga embarked on a path that would see her execute those very close to her bloodline. Upon receiving the Drevlins' audacious marriage proposal to unite her with their Prince Mal, Olga's cunning mind weaved a dark scheme. She consented to the proposal but asked that the most distinguished Drevlian envoys bring their prince the next day. With deceptive calm, she welcomed these envoys, lavishing them with hospitality, only to order their brutal execution in a savage demonstration of her resolve. The couriers were buried alive as a grim statement about the fate awaiting those who dared cross her. Her next act of vengeance was equally shrewd and ruthless. Olga invited a greater party of Drevlian dignitaries to Kiev, under the guise of holding a grand feast to honor the visiting guests. In an act reminiscent of ancient sagas, as the Drevlians reveled in the opulence of the feast, Olga ordered the doors to be barred and the hall to be set ablaze, incinerating her enemies in an inferno of her making. These were not mere acts of barbarity but calculated moves in a larger game of chess where every piece she sacrificed paved the way for her triumph. Lucia, her own niece, was among the targets of her wrath. Accused of conspiring with the same tribe that murdered her father, Lucia's death was ordered by Olga, further cementing her reputation as a sovereign who would spare no one, not even her kin, in her quest for total domination. Olga's vengeance culminated in a siege against the Drevlian capital of Iskorosin. Utilizing psychological warfare that would make even the most conniving tactician proud, she requested birds from the besieged city as a token of submission. Once she received the birds, her forces attached sulfur and cloth to their legs and set them alight, releasing them to fly back to their nests, thereby setting the entire city ablaze from within. But beyond the visceral ferocity of her retribution lies a story of a ruler who, having avenged her husband's death, turned to a path of noteworthy statesmanship and conversion. After her bloody deeds, she became the first ruler of Kiev to convert to Christianity, earning sainthood in the eyes of the Eastern Orthodox Church for her role in spreading the faith. It is a paradox that the same queen who unleashed unprecedented violence also laid the foundation for a new spiritual legacy. One might ponder upon the complexity of such a figure, a queen who embodied the primal instincts of vengeance but also demonstrated an astute understanding of power and governance. Olga's life is a testament to the intricate tapestry of human nature, where darkness and light intermingle, creating a narrative both harrowing and awe-inspiring. Thus, Queen Olga remains enshrined in history not only for her merciless wrath but also for her transformative journey from a retributive widow to a revered saint, reflecting the eternal struggle within the human soul between vengeance and redemption. Ladies and gentlemen, dear listeners, let us now traverse the pathways of ancient wisdom and divine guidance as we delve into the theological perspectives on power and ambition. In this discourse, we shall explore the transcendent truths that the Holy Scriptures reveal about such perennial human inclinations. From the earliest pages of sacred texts, we find the cautionary tales and divine commandments that speak to the hearts of those who wield power. Consider, for instance, the words from the Epistle of James. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. James chapter 3 verse 16, ESV. This stark admonition warns us of the inherent chaos and moral decay that accompany unchecked desires for power. Our journey begins at the very dawn of humanity, in the primordial garden where Adam and Eve resided. The serpent's deceitful whisper promised the first humans that they could be like God, knowing good and evil. Genesis chapter 3 verse 5, ESV. Their ambition led them to grasp for a power beyond their rightful dominion, resulting in their expulsion from Eden and the introduction of sin into the world. Here, we see that ambition, untethered from divine will, leads to separation from God and the forfeiture of paradise. In the annals of history, the desires for power and the lengths taken to secure it have often led to moral downfall. King Saul, anointed as the first king of Israel, allowed envy and fear to consume him. His desperate attempts to maintain power by eliminating perceived threats, including his relentless pursuit of David, exemplify how ambition can corrupt the soul. Saul's life serves as a testament to the perils of forsaking divine guidance for the sake of temporal authority. Turning our gaze to the New Testament, we encounter a poignant illustration of true versus false ambition in the request of James and John. These disciples, seeking positions of honor in Christ's kingdom, asked, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory." Mark chapter 10 verse 37, ESV. Jesus responded with a lesson in servanthood, instructing them that, "Whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be slave of all." Mark chapter 10 verses 43 to 44, ESV. Here, ambition is redefined not as a quest for dominance but as a call to humble service. The paradoxical nature of spiritual authority is further exemplified in the life and teachings of Christ, who, though he possessed the ultimate power, chose the path of a servant. Philippians chapter 2 verses 6 to 7, ESV, tells us that Jesus, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant. This kenosis, or self-emptying, challenges human notions of power and ambition, urging us toward a model of leadership marked by humility and sacrificial love. Reflecting on the tragic stories of historical queens who spilled familial blood in their ascension to power, we must consider the profound theological insights concerning the moral consequences of such actions. The commandment, "You shall not murder," Exodus chapter 20 verse 13, ESV, unequivocally condemns taking innocent life, emphasizing the sanctity of every human being created in the image of God. The deliberate execution of one's kin not only shatters familial bonds but also defies the divine order, invoking judgment and divine retribution. The scriptures repeatedly illustrate that the pursuit of power for its own sake leads to ruin. Whether in the narrative of King Ahaz and his descent into idolatry and child sacrifice or the rise and fall of the northern kingdom through successive violent usurpations, the biblical record underscores that power divorced from righteousness corrodes both the individual and the community. Yet, In the midst of these sobering truths, we also find a message of redemption and hope. The story of Zacchaeus, the tax collector who climbed a sycamore tree to see Jesus, resonates with transformative power. His encounter with Christ led to a profound change, prompting him to forsake his ill-gotten wealth and restore what he had wrongfully taken. This narrative reveals that no heart is beyond the reach of divine grace, and the ambition once misdirected can be redeemed for the work of justice and reconciliation. Thus, as we ponder the theological perspectives on power and ambition, we are called to examine our own hearts. Are our desires aligned with God's will, or do they reflect the selfish ambitions warned against in Scripture? We must seek the wisdom of the Proverbs. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your paths. Proverbs chapter 3 verses 5-6, ESV. In conclusion, the theological lens provides a profound understanding of the moral consequences associated with the pursuit of power. It challenges us to transcend the fleeting allure of dominance and to embrace a life of humble service, anchored in divine love and guided by eternal truths. May we, in our own spheres of influence, strive to lead with integrity and grace, ever mindful of the eternal kingdom that calls us to a higher standard. In the annals of history, tales of treachery and ambition weave a dark tapestry, one in which royalty often casts aside familial bonds in the relentless pursuit of power. This theme, though chilling, is not confined to any single culture or era. Across the globe, from the ancient kingdoms of the Orient to the monarchies of Europe, the ruthless calculus of political survival has demanded the ultimate sacrifice. Let us embark on a comparative analysis of these historical queens and their infamous counterparts in other lands, shedding light on the universal nature of these power struggles. Begin with the notorious Queen Jezebel of Israel. Her story, drenched in blood and betrayal, resonates with the same intensity as that of Empress Wu Zetian of China. Both women, driven by unyielding ambition, orchestrated the downfall of those who shared their blood. Jezebel, with her cunning and decisive ruthlessness, mirrors Wu Zetian's intricate plots within the Tang dynasty's court, which saw the elimination of potential rivals, including her own family members. Their actions, starkly similar despite the vast geographical and cultural divide, underline a broader pattern of ruthless pragmatism in the quest for dominance. Turn now to Queen Mary I of England, Bloody Mary, a figure whose determination to restore Catholicism led to a reign marked by the blood of many, including her kin. Compare her, then, to the intricate political maneuvers of Queen Catherine de' Medici of France. Catherine, embroiled in the religious wars of her time, did not hesitate to eliminate threats within her own family to secure her children's succession. In both cases, religious and political ambitions intertwined, resulting in an era of familial executions to safeguard their fragile thrones. The narrative continues with Queen Olga of Kiev, whose vengeance-fueled actions following her husband's assassination display an unyielding grip on power, much like the famed Ivan the Terrible of Russia. Ivan's paranoia and fear of betrayal led him to commit horrendous acts against his own bloodline. Both sovereigns, though separated by different eras and contexts, illustrate the tyrannical lengths to which rulers will go to solidify their reign. Elsewhere, Queen Ranavalona I of Madagascar embodies the archetype of a sovereign willing to sacrifice her own for the stability of her empire. Her thorough suppression of opposition, familial or otherwise, is akin to the methods employed by the Mughal emperors of India. Consider Aurangzeb, who, in his ascent to power, did not hesitate to imprison his own father and execute his brothers. These parallel stories from the African and Indian continents convey a sobering reality about imperial rule. The proximity of power demands harsh measures. Even outside the sphere of monarchy, the echoes of familial strife in the name of power are heard. The Roman Republic's history is replete with figures like Lucius Cornelius Sulla, who, during his reign of terror, eliminated potential adversaries, including members of his familial sphere. This resonates deeply with the tactics of Emperor Augustus who, to secure his hold on Rome, navigated through a mire of familial conspiracies and purges. In reflecting upon these stories, a central theme emerges. The dynamics of power often compel those at the pinnacle to prioritize dominion over kinship. This phenomenon transcends borders and epochs, illustrating an almost inherent aspect of human nature when intertwined with the intoxicating lure of absolute authority. Through this comparative lens, it becomes apparent that the tragic sacrifices made by these queens are part of a broader, universal narrative. By examining their lives alongside other historical figures, we see a reflection of humanity's perennial struggle with power, ambition, and the moral quandaries they invoke. And thus, history serves as a mirror, inviting us to scrutinize not just the past, but also the enduring impulses that shape the human condition. In every corner of our world, through vast expanses of history, the human heart remains a labyrinth of desires, fears, and ambitions. It is within this intricate heart that we must search to understand what compels individuals, particularly those ensconced in the mantles of power, to commit such grievous sins against their own kin. What dark currents flow through the mind when driven by the dual engines of fear and ambition? Modern psychological theories beckon us to explore this enigma, offering a lantern to illuminate the obscure corridors of human behavior. Consider, if you will, the notion of *** cognitive dissonance. This theory, first proposed by Leon Festinger, posits that individuals experience discomfort when they hold two or more contradictory beliefs, values, or attitudes. Imagine a queen, bound by the sacred oath to protect her family, yet equally driven by an insatiable thirst for power. The tension between these two conflicting desires births a storm within, compelling her to alleviate the mental discord by choosing one path over the other. In many instances, the scales tip in favor of ambition, leading to the cold calculation of eliminating those who pose a threat to her authority, even if they share her blood. Then there is the concept of *** narcissism**, as extensively explored by psychologists. Narcissistic tendencies can drive a person to prioritize their own needs and self-image above all else. A ruler imbued with a sense of grandiosity and entitlement may perceive relatives not as familial ties to cherish, but as mere pawns or potential adversaries in their game of dominion. The overwhelming need to protect their own legacy can eclipse familial bonds, transforming kin into dispensable obstacles on the path to maintaining control. Furthermore, the phenomenon of *** groupthink** must be acknowledged. In the hallowed halls of a royal court, a ruler is seldom alone. Advisors and confidants spur on her decisions. Irving Janis's theory on groupthink reveals how cohesive groups can foster an environment where critical thinking is overshadowed by the collective desire for harmony or conformity. A queen, surrounded by a council that advocates for ruthless measures, might find herself swayed to commit heinous acts against her family, convinced that such actions are in accord with the greater good of her reign. The collective mindset serves to justify, even glorify, the darkest of deeds. And what of the *** power paradox? Social psychologist Decker Keltner suggests that while power often comes to those who are empathetic and socially intelligent, it can paradoxically corrupt, leading to a decline in those very traits. The theory posits that the attainment of power can result in a disconnection from others' feelings and needs. Hence, a queen who once tenderly cradled her newborn sibling or smiled at her cousin's youthful exploits may, over time, become cold and indifferent, seeing them only through the prism of political threat rather than familial love. Lastly, Attentional bias plays a sinister role. This cognitive bias skews perception, causing one to focus on certain pieces of information while neglecting others. For a ruler, surrounded by whispers of insurrection and treachery, attentional bias may amplify perceived threats disproportionately. Innocuous actions by family members could be interpreted as seditious, provoking preemptive strikes against them. This perpetuates a vicious cycle of distrust and aggression, severing the connections that bind family members in a web of paranoia and suspicion. Thus, through the lens of psychology, what might initially appear as incomprehensibly cruel acts by queens against their own blood are rendered with a semblance of tragic clarity. These theories weave together a tapestry depicting a human mind beleaguered by internal conflicts, susceptible to corruptive forces, and often led astray by its own biases. As we peer into these dark tales, let us be reminded of the fragile balance within our own hearts and the vigilance required to guard against the shadows of our baser natures. In the grand tapestry of history, the actions of certain queens cast shadows as rich and enduring as the brightest beams of light. These rulers, who committed the unthinkable by executing their own kin, left indelible marks not just on their immediate circles, but on entire dynasties and epochs. One's mind must wonder how the decisions taken by individuals, often in the throes of ambition and desperation, ripple outwards to alter the course of nations and posterity. Let us first consider the impact on the dynasties themselves. The immediate consequence of such ruthless actions often manifested in a temporary consolidation of power. Take, for instance, Empress Wu Zetian of China. Her methods, brutal and unyielding, secured her position as the sole female emperor in Chinese history. By eliminating rivals within her own family, she established a reign that could pursue its objectives unencumbered by internal strife. Yet, behind this veneer of stability, the seeds of discord remained, ready to sprout at the faintest hint of a lapse in vigilance. The prolonged impact, however, unveils a more complex narrative. The very acts that solidified power also sowed deep mistrust and fear. Consider the case of Queen Mary I of England, infamously known as Bloody Mary. Her zeal and ruthlessness in persecuting heresy, which extended to her family, momentarily upheld her religious and political doctrines. Nonetheless, the legacy of her reign intensified Protestant resolve and further polarized an already fragmented nation, setting the stage for future religious conflicts. Turning our gaze to Madagascar, Queen Ranavalona I's draconian measures to maintain control had long-lasting repercussions. By executing those closest to her, she instilled a pervasive sense of fear that endured beyond her reign. The dynastic succession, fraught with paranoia and betrayal, struggled with insecurity and internal dissent, undermining the very foundation she sought to protect. In a similar vein, Queen Catherine de' Medici's machinations underscore the dual-edged nature of such power plays. Her interventions within the royal family aimed to secure her son's reigns, yet they fueled continuous factionalism and bloodshed. The massacre of St. Bartholomew's Day remains a poignant reminder of how the pursuit of power through ruthless means can ignite enduring sectarian violence. Extending our examination to broader historical legacies, one must appreciate how these acts shape societal norms and political philosophies. The stories of these queens become cautionary tales, echoing through the annals of history. They emphasize the corrosive potential of uncontrolled ambition and the moral decay that can accompany a relentless pursuit of power. The dynasties affected by these acts often faced not only immediate political fallout but also long-term damage to their legitimacy and stability. Moreover, the psychological impact on a governed populace should not be underestimated. The reigns of such queens fostered atmospheres of suspicion and fear, breeding a culture where treachery was anticipated and loyalty was tenuous. This legacy of mistrust can persist, affecting not only the perception of the ruling class but also the very fabric of societal interactions and governance. It is enlightening, therefore, to view these queens not merely as historical figures but as pivotal actors in an ongoing human drama that underscores fundamental truths about the nature of power and its repercussions. As we move forward, recognizing their legacy helps us better understand the cost of unchecked ambition and the importance of ethical leadership in shaping not just the destinies of individuals, but the trajectory of civilizations. Their stories, dark as they may be, serve as essential reflections for contemporary society. They invite us to scrutinize the motives and methods of modern governance, urging a collective mindfulness about the moral dimensions of leadership. In pondering their profound impacts, we gain insights into the dynamics that continue to influence our world today, reminding us that history, if not a teacher, is at least a mirror reflecting the perennial struggles of the human condition. In the grand tapestry of history, certain characters stand out as particularly notorious, capturing the imagination of society for generations. Among these figures, the queens who executed their own kin hold a distinctive and chilling allure. Such stories, replete with power, betrayal, and bloodshed, have found their way into an array of cultural representations, each reimagining and retelling these eerie tales in a manner that speaks to the heart of human intrigue and horror. Literature, perhaps more than any other medium, has continuously drawn upon the lurid tales of these queens, weaving stories that both thrill and caution. Take, for instance, Queen Jezebel of Israel. In biblical narratives, her name evokes images of cunning and malevolence. Her tale has permeated literary works across centuries, influencing characters and plots in countless books. In many a novel, a Jezebel might appear, a woman of unmatched ambition, willing to transverse moral boundaries to achieve her ends. This archetype reminds readers of the perilous intersections of ambition and morality, a theme that resonates deeply with the human condition. The silver screen, with its unparalleled ability to visually and emotionally captivate, has also embraced these queens, resurrecting their stories with a blend of historical fidelity and dramatic license. Queen Mary I of England, often dubbed Bloody Mary, has been portrayed in various films and television series. Her reign, marked by efforts to restore Catholicism to England and the subsequent persecution of Protestants, is depicted in ways that highlight the moral complexities and personal torments that perhaps drove her actions. The dramatic retellings evoke a mixture of revulsion and sympathy, allowing viewers to glimpse the human behind the historical figure. Empress Wu Zetian, the only female emperor in Chinese history, presents a compelling case of cultural representation that transcends borders. In Chinese dramas and literature, her story is one of a keen strategist and a formidable ruler, enveloped in an aura of legend. Artistic depictions often vacillate between admiration for her intelligence and ruthlessness, and condemnation for her apparent heartlessness, particularly towards her own family. This duality in representation encapsulates the fine line between awe and horror that such figures perpetuate. The tale of Queen Ranavalona I of Madagascar has made its way into various cultural narratives, painting her as a tyrant of almost mythical proportions. Popular media often portrays her as an embodiment of despotism, a figure whose measures to maintain power were shockingly extreme. However, beneath this veneer of cruelty, some representations dig deeper, exploring the geopolitical and cultural pressures that might have influenced her harsh rule. These complex portrayals remind audiences that historical perceptions are often colored by the victor's lenses, urging a reevaluation of context and motive. Literature, film, and media in general have also found a fertile ground in the story of Queen Catherine de' Medici of France. Her legacy, intertwined with the turbulent history of the French Wars of Religion, provides ample material for tragic and dramatic retellings. Portrayals of Catherine often emphasize her role as a manipulative and powerful matriarch, orchestrating political marriages and assassinations to secure her children's succession. This image of a cold, calculating queen has become almost iconic, yet nuanced adaptations strive to reveal her maternal motivations and the desperate political landscape she navigated. The 20th century's surge in psychological thrillers and historical dramas has further proliferated the eerie allure of these queens. Figures such as Olga of Kiev are fodder for stories that delve into the psyches of women who defy traditional female roles with an unsettling ferocity. Film and literature alike explore not just their actions, but the perceived psychological traumas and environmental influences that shaped such notorious decisions. These explorations serve not only to entertain but also to provoke deeper thought about the human experience and the sometimes terrifying potential of ambition and power. The continuous retelling of these queens' stories signifies more than a mere fascination with the macabre. It reflects society's quest to understand the darker facets of human nature. By resurrecting and reinterpreting these historical figures in various media, we engage in a collective examination of the perils of unrestrained ambition and the complex morality of leadership. Their stories, though often dark and disturbing, are tools through which we attempt to glean lessons for both personal and communal ethos. Ultimately, the cultural representations of these queens serve as both mirrors and warnings. They hold up a reflection of our own fears, ambitions, and moral struggles, urging us to ponder the paths we choose in our own quests for power and legacy. Through the lens of literature, film, and media, Jezebel, Mary, Wu Zetian, Rana Valona, Catherine, and Olga, among others, transcend their historical confines, becoming timeless icons of the dangerous dance between authority and morality. Lessons from history, as we turn to this part of our exploration, invites us to ponder deeply upon what history has left us, not just in grand monuments and forgotten battles, but in the subtle, persistent hum of wisdom that lingers long after the dust has settled. What is it that we, the heirs of so many civilizations, must learn from these tales of queens who, in their tireless ambition, chose the most dreadful paths to secure their thrones? To begin with, one cannot help but be struck by the ageless truth. The nature of absolute power is inherently corrupting. When we observe the reigns of these monarchs, it becomes evident that the unbridled authority vested in them often led to moral decay. The overwhelming power, untethered by checks and balances, encourages a distortion of perspective. It transforms the once noble desire to lead into a monstrous ambition that sees no bounds, even at the cost of one's own flesh and blood. This is as true today as it was in ancient times. Contemporary leaders and societies must heed this lesson with utmost seriousness. Furthermore, these historical narratives compel us to reflect on the moral dilemmas posed by unchecked ambition. Consider Jezebel, who orchestrated the deaths of many, including kin, to ensure her sovereignty. Or think of Queen Mary I, whose fervent desire to fortify her religious stance drove her to execute those of her own lineage. These actions were not merely of historical interest but are cautionary tales reminding us of the perils of righteous zeal taken to extremes. They force us to question, when does ambition cross the line into tyranny? At what point does the pursuit of an ostensibly noble cause justify the sacrifice of one's moral compass? In the study of these sovereigns' lives, we must understand the nuanced portrait of human nature they paint. We see clearly that the seed of tyranny is often sown not in overt acts of malevolence, but in the quiet, often rational justifications of necessary evils. What begins as a small compromise for the greater good can swiftly spiral out of control. Modern societies, with all their advancements, are not immune to such insidious erosion of ethics. Another palpable lesson is the importance of accountability in leadership. Without accountability, power becomes dangerously self-reinforcing. This is beautifully illustrated in the tale of Empress Wu Zetian, whose elimination of potential rivals only solidified her legend as a formidable, though oft-feared, ruler. It reminds us that power without oversight leads to isolation, and isolation fosters a brutal disconnect from humanity, a disconnection that can have catastrophic consequences. Moreover, the historical insights draw our attention to the fragile nature of stability built on fear and oppression. When rulers like Queen Ranavalona I use terror to secure their power, their dynasties often languish in instability long after their reign ends. The seeming strength derived from such despotic control is an illusion, masking the underlying brittleness of a rule reliant on brutality. Today's leaders must comprehend that true, enduring power lies in just governance and the trust of the people, not in coercion and fear. In summation, when we reflect upon the lessons from these grim chapters of history, we uncover timeless truths that resonate today. We see the dangers of absolute power, the ethical abyss of boundless ambition, and the imperative of accountable leadership. We are reminded that the bedrock of any great society rests not on the fleeting achievements of power, but on the enduring principles of justice, integrity, and compassion. May we, in our quest for progress in governance, always turn a mindful ear to the echoes of the past. For in understanding our history, we not only honor those before us but also forge a path of wisdom for those yet to come. Let us pause for a moment to consider the lessons that history, with its myriad tales of ambition and ruthlessness, offers to our present age. These queens, whose actions have shocked and fascinated generations, are not mere relics of a bygone era. They serve as stern reminders of the unchanging nature of human ambition and the perils it harbors. In examining our current societal landscape, one cannot help but draw parallels between the despotic rulers of yore and certain figures in contemporary politics and business. The lust for power, the drive for control, and the machinations used to achieve dominance are as prevalent today as they were in the courts of these historical monarchs. This realization should urge us to reflect deeply on our own leadership structures and the moral integrity, or lack thereof, of those at the helm. Consider, for instance, the modern political arena, where leaders often find themselves embroiled in scandals, accusations of corruption, and unethical behaviors. The same whisper of ambition that led queens like Jezebel or Wu Zetian to commit heinous acts reverberates through the corridors of power today. The quest for supremacy can erode the very foundations of justice and integrity that hold society together. Moreover, in the world of business, the shadow of these historical figures looms large. Corporate executives, driven by a relentless pursuit of profit and market domination, may sometimes resort to devious strategies that reflect the same ruthless efficiency seen in the reigns of these ancient queens. The sacrifice of ethics on the altar of success is a narrative that transcends time, and it is one we see replayed in various boardrooms around the globe. As responsible members of society, it behooves us to ask, what can we learn from these stories? How can we navigate the treacherous waters of power without succumbing to its corrupting influence? The reflection on these queens' lives seeks to illuminate the moral choices before us. By understanding their missteps and the consequences thereof, we are better equipped to chart a course toward ethical governance and principled leadership. In essence, the stories of these historical queens are not just tales of the past. They are cautionary reminders of the dangers that follow unchecked ambition. They urge us to hold our leaders accountable, to demand transparency and integrity, and to foster a culture where power is wielded with wisdom and compassion rather than with selfish intent. Ultimately, the examination of such figures should prompt us to introspection. Are we, in our personal and professional lives, making choices that contribute to a just and equitable society? Do we value ethical considerations over expedient solutions? By heeding the lessons from the past, we can aspire to create a future where leadership is synonymous with virtue, where power serves the greater good, and where history's dark chapters do not repeat themselves. Indeed, it is in the sober reflection on these historical accounts that we find the keys to a more ethical and balanced exercise of authority in our contemporary world. Let us carry these lessons forward, striving to build a legacy not marred by the scourge of ambition, but illuminated by the light of conscientious and moral leadership. In our journey through history, we've traversed the brutal paths tread by some of the most infamous queens who have secured their thrones through bloodshed and betrayal. We began with Queen Jezebel of Israel, whose ambition saw her orchestrate numerous executions, including those of her own kin. Then, we turned to Queen Mary I of England, known as Bloody Mary, whose fervent quest to restore Catholicism led her to execute relatives she deemed threats. We delved into the extraordinary yet ruthless rise of Empress Wu Zetian of China, the only female emperor in Chinese history, who allegedly eliminated family members to solidify her rule. From there, we explored the reign of Queen Ranavalona I of Madagascar, whose extreme measures to maintain control included the execution of her own family. Queen Catherine de' Medici of France offered a story of intricate power struggles, where she was deeply enmeshed in the conspiracies leading to the deaths of her relatives to ensure her children's succession. The vengeance-fueled rule of Queen Olga of Kiev provided another stark example of familial brutality in the quest for power. These chilling tales underscore broader themes of power, ambition, and ruthlessness. Each story reveals the depths to which individuals may go to secure authority, highlighting the corrupting nature of absolute power. These historical accounts encourage us to reflect on human nature and the complexities of leadership, urging a deeper understanding of the moral consequences tied to ambition. As we conclude this exploration, I invite you to take a moment to reflect on these themes and how they resonate within our own lives. If you found this journey through history compelling, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and leave your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Your feedback is invaluable, and we welcome suggestions for future video topics. Let us continue to learn from history, seeking wisdom and compassion in leadership. Dear Lord, we come before you in humble reflection, pondering the weight of power and the consequences of our choices. We have heard the stories of rulers whose ambition led them down dark paths, turning against even their own kin. We ask for your guidance and wisdom, that we may lead with a heart of compassion and a spirit of righteousness. Protect us from the corrupting nature of power and help us to seek justice and mercy in all our ways. Grant us the strength to overcome envy and selfish ambition, choosing instead the path of humility and service. We pray that your light may guide all those in positions of authority, that they might lead with integrity and grace. In your holy name, we pray. Amen.